want to do a little bit of this.
Consent, heart and voice and instrumental, hallelujah.
spiritual called Joshua Fit the Battle of Jericho. It's all about how Joshua fought a battle, but we sing it in a dialect, like the way the black people used to sing. So it's got words like fit instead of fought. That's what we're singing about. A lot of Negro spirituals, like this one called Deep River, have words in them that talk about going someplace else. And we've been talking about how the words are not only about going to heaven when you die, but sometimes it's also about the slaves using secret messages, talking to each other about how they were going to escape. So in this one, you're going to hear about the promised land. And when we sing it, we think about not only heaven, but maybe places like Thomaston, Maine, where people escaped from the Underground Railroad. Soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, they were not accompanied. And that kind of music really was the music that they sang all by themselves, and their accompaniment was just their own voices. Now, gospel music is something that sprung up from popular music in the late 19th century, actually the middle of the 19th century. It was always accompanied, and the root of it isn't at all unaccompanied music, but actually music from shows, and sometimes music that was played in dance halls. So we're going to do a gospel tune now for you called Sign Me Up. And you'll hear the piano playing here of Mr. Clayton W. Smith, who gets right into the gospel style. And our group is not used to performing with Clayton. Clayton is the accompanist for Down East singers, but for special occasions we bring him in and turn him loose on a piece like this. And we're going to hear some soloists. We're going to do this piece twice because it goes by so fast. And on the first verse, you'll hear Catherine Armstrong and Claire Geyer. And on the second time through, you'll hear Liz Tripp and Tessa Antolini. This is Sign Me Up.
Ah!
this next number, called This Little Light of Mine, is a Negro spiritual. We're singing in an arrangement by a man named Horace Clarence Boyer, who is a very, very famous black educator about the tradition of Negro spirituals and gospel music. And he goes all around. He teaches at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. He goes all around New England teaching white people what to do with his music. And I spent a harrowing 2 days under his instruction, in which he made a whole classroom of white organists sit down and learn how to accompany music of this kind. And the first session, I can tell you, was pretty square. But at the end of his tutelage, then we all kind of loosened up and realized that what's on the page is only a suggestion. What you do with this kind of music is add to it all the time. So Clayton's going to add quite a lot to this, I think, but it's different every time we do it.
It's different than it was in rehearsal.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Jesus, give it to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus, give it to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus, give it to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it
Now, as you all know, all of this black music that we've been singing so far came from Africa. So we're going to sing you now a folk song which comes straight from Africa, from the Zulu culture. And this is an arrangement by an American composer named Hal Hobson. And I have to point out that it's a great pleasure to have in the audience today some graduates of our group, Sarah Payne and Meredith Badley, who used to sing this piece and have now gotten so old that they sing in Down East Singers. Would you two like to join the group and sing this? Come on. This should prove to you that you're never too old to sing in your old group. Okay. Do you need copies of this? You probably don't. Do you? Okay, now on the solos, we're going to have some solos for you here. And I would like to acknowledge the soloists. On the first verse, raise your hand. Who's number one? Liz Tripp and Nell Fifth, sorry. And Maya Holzhauer. On the second verse, Claire Geyer. And on the third verse, Catherine Armstrong and Daphne Braden. And I want you to pay special homage to Daphne Braden, because today when Catherine got here, all the other people that sing her verse weren't here, and Daphne said, "I'll do it." And I said, "That's what good musicianship is about." She jumped right in, and she's ready to go. And on the next verse is Casa Antonini. So here's "We Are Singing for the Lord is Our Light." And the first part of it you won't understand because we sing it in Zulu with perfect pronunciation.
Sia
something else that is equally ostentatious. All right? We don't have everybody here today. This group has a tradition of kind of time sharing. We almost never perform with everybody here. We had a stunning Sunday at church last month when everybody showed up. We didn't have room for them. So now we're back to the usual time sharing. There are about 4 of them that aren't here. Liz Tripp from Tennant's Harbor. Over here. Hold your applause, please. Nell Smith from Washington, Maine. And her brother Nathaniel Smith in the alto section, also from Washington, Maine. Roland Robitaille from Hope. And Roland's younger sister, Hannah Robitaille. And Angus Pfister from Thomaston, Maine. No, don't wave at me, wave at them. Naomi Holzhauer from Rockland. Way bigger, Naomi, I'm not sure they've all seen you. Good. And her older sister, Maya Holzhauer from Rockland. And you've already heard one of our soloists, Claire Geyer from Thomaston. And Sam Edwards-Jenks from Thomaston in the alto section. And his younger brother, Jonas Edwards-Jenks, over here next to me. Hannah Doubleday, who fell out of a tree. We don't know whether her arm is broken or not, but in the spirit of the show must go on, she just slung that arm and came right over and sent it anyway. And her older sister, Amanda Doubleday, over here. And a new member of our group from Rockland, Danji Buckmore, over here. And Daphne Braden from Rockland. And Philip Bertocci from Thomaston. Catherine Armstrong from Thomaston, and last but not least, Tessa Antolini from Cushing. Give them a big round of applause. I'm sorry. I left out one person because she wasn't on my list. Two? Who did I leave out? Yes. Oh, my heavens. Marielle? What is your last name, Marielle? Dowling. Marielle Dowling from Rockland? Rockport. And Tiana from, tell me your last name. Wolf Whitehead. I knew these double names are sometimes very complicated. And you are from Union. Last year, and then we thought she wasn't coming back, and about a month ago she reappeared. So I apologize to you for not having you on the list. I also apologize to you, Mario. That's my fault. Okay, are we ready to people look east? Okay. And we're going to turn back. About a month ago, our group was invited to sing up in Bangor, at Bangor Theological Seminary, for an ecumenical program for the Maine Council of Churches called Seeds of Promise. And we chose to do a lot of different kinds of music, and this really isn't an Advent piece at all, because it comes from the Jewish tradition. It's a Hasidic folk song, and we really enjoy the fact that it has many different speeds. We work with something called accelerando, which means that the music gets faster and faster. And the young people in the audience may want to notice that we start at one speed and each verse ends at quite another speed.
Royal
Several years ago, we had an opportunity at St. John's to sing this hymn for the person who wrote the words, and the program doesn't show it, but they're written by a bishop, an Episcopal bishop named Jeffrey Rothman. And he came and visited our church, and the children sang this. He wrote them a very nice letter, which we still have in a frame on the wall. And he came forward and met the singers during the rehearsal, and after he finished talking to them, he said, "Are there any questions?" And one very young singer who is not in the group anymore raised his hand and said, "I didn't know that anybody in this hymn book was alive." So, Mr. Jeffrey is now, I think, living in Paris, but he's still very much alive. Started work on it. It's a Christmas piece, but the poem is by a very, very famous poet whose name is Christopher Smart, who lived from 1722 to 1771. Christopher Smart is the author of a text which is very famous in the choral world called Rejoice in the Lamb. It's compiled by Benjamin Britten. This is not from Rejoice in the Lamb. Christopher Smart spent almost his entire life in an insane asylum, and people thought he was crazy. While he was in the insane asylum, he wrote poetry like this. This poem is so important. I've asked Tessa Antolini to read it to you before we sing.
Where is this stupendous stranger? Prophets, shepherds, kings advise. Lead me to my master's manger. Show me where my Savior lies. O most mighty, O most holy, far beyond the seraph's thought, art thou then so weak and lowly, as unheeded prophets taught? Oh, the magnitude of meekness, worth immortal sprung. Oh, the strength of infiniteness, if eternal is so young. God all bounteous, all creative, whom no ills from good dissuade, is incarnate and native of the very world he made.
And that is perfect performance practice to use it. Several members of the Down East Singers here who probably would very much like to stand up and sing their parts too, because we're going to do this same number next weekend. I cannot resist the opportunity to remind you that Down East, another group with which I am affiliated, is doing a concert next Friday the 11th at 7:30 at Thomaston Baptist. And if that's inconvenient, we're going to repeat that concert on Sunday the 13th at 2:30 at Rockport Opera House. And we're going to do it as an audience sing-along, but this group is going to do it as a performance.
Over the hills and
to a reception which is going to be held in the library. Is it in the library, Kevin?
It is in the library.
It is in the library. And you will also, if you come to the reception, get to hear Harborside Harmony. Did I get that name right?
Yes.
Good. I'm very glad I got that right. Before we do our last number, I'd like to thank this voice that is coming from above here, Hannah Curtin, the librarian of Thomaston Public Library, who invited us and who worked with Jamie Doubleday and many other people to decorate this place. I'd also like to thank many parents of the St. John's Youth Choir who have baked food for this, and other parents who have and will help with moving risers and things like that. We couldn't do anything like this without a wonderful group of support. So I thank you. Let's give them a big hand. Now our group is divided into two groups. Those that say, "Oh boy," when I say Carol of the Bells, and the others that say, "Oh no, not that again." Would you two like to come up and sing this with us? No? All right.
Oh no, not that again.
Okay, here we go.